The room was filled with the soft clinking of cutlery, the sound of chairs creaking slightly as people leaned in to pass dishes, and the kind of laughter that always felt just one note off too rehearsed, too polite. I sat near the end of the table, as I often did during family gatherings. My plate held more conversation than food. I listened. I nodded. I smiled. Iris's voice cut through the small talk like a polished blade. "So, Lenore," she began, swirling her wine with the confidence of someone who thought herself charming. "How does it feel being useless?" She let the word linger, draw out, then smiled, wide teeth perfect, tone practiced, the kind of smile meant to gather approval, and it worked. Caden chuckled under his breath. Her sister-in-law let out a startled laugh, then quickly glanced at me. Even my grandson, still in high school, smirked and looked away. I didn't say a word. I set down my water glass, steady and slow. I looked at Iris fully for the first time that afternoon. She wore designer sunglasses on top of her head and a linen blouse I had once paid for, though she'd never asked. Only assumed. Her laugh lines were shallow. Her confidence was loud. I straightened my back and kept my voice quiet. "How does it feel?" I said. "Knowing this useless one won't be paying your bills anymore." The silence was instant. It sucked the air from the table. Iris blinked. The smirk slid from her lips. Caden's fork paused midair. No one laughed this time. My words settled over the table like heavy velvet. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I rose, the legs of the chair dragging across the hardwood with finality. I took my purse from the back of the chair, nodded once at no one in particular, and walked out through the patio doors. Behind me, the table held its breath. Outside, the sunlight met my face like an old friend, and I realized I hadn't exhaled fully in years. The locked drawer in my office was waiting. It started with a late mortgage payment. Caden had called one evening, voice low, words tangled in embarrassment. Iris had overspent again. The boutique wasn't bringing in what they expected. They were a little behind, and the bank was sending letters. I wired the money that night, $4,200. No questions, no judgment. I told myself I was helping them catch their breath. Everyone falls behind sometimes. Everyone needs grace. They didn't mention it again, not even a thank you. But a month later, it was something else. The lease on the boutique space had jumped. Then it was a credit card payment Iris had forgotten while planning a birthday party. Then a school deposit for my grandson's private academy. All urgent, all quietly passed on to me. I began keeping track. At first, it was out of habit. I had been an accountant my entire career. Numbers calmed me. Order reassured me. A spreadsheet grew on my desktop. Tucked away in a locked folder, dates, amounts, reasons, sometimes even the receipts I requested and never received. The sum grew faster than I expected. I never showed it to them. They never asked. Dependable became my job title. Not mother, not Lenore. Just the one who kept things from falling apart. At first, I thought it was love. Then I thought it was duty. Eventually, I stopped thinking at all. There was a moment, maybe a year in, when Iris kissed my cheek after a dinner she hadn't paid for and said, "I don't know what we'd do without you." She didn't mean it as gratitude. It was a warning. I started printing the statements after that. Now, standing in the quiet of my house. I walked to my office, opened the bottom drawer, and slid the folder out. The papers inside felt heavier than they should have. There was a small cabin near Lake Lure I used to drive past on weekends. White shutters, screened porch, tucked into a curve of pine trees. Nothing extravagant, just stillness and space. I'd been saving for it for nearly 5 years. A little place of my own, where I could wake up to birdsong and coffee by the water. The down payment was nearly ready when Iris called. She had a vision. The boutique, she said, could expand. With my help. She used words like legacy and family investment. Caden said, "We're so close." "Mom, This could really change things for us. It was framed as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, so I cashed the fund, co-signed the loan, watched them print my name on paper as if it meant nothing. They never asked what I was giving up. I never offered. A year later, I was invited to attend a painting retreat in Taos. 3 weeks of sun, oil, silence. I almost said yes. Then Caden mentioned how expensive braces were getting and how their insurance didn't cover much. I didn't wait for the ask. I just made the transfer. The retreat brochure stayed on my fridge until the edges curled. No one ever noticed it was gone. I don't know when it stopped being occasional. The sacrifices blurred together until they were just my rhythm. I was the cushion, the fallback, the net. They rose and flourished on ground I had cleared for them, and they never once looked back. I flipped through the documents in the folder. Boutique receipts, school payments, loan papers with my signature inked clean across the bottom. I had dreams once, and I traded them, one by one, for theirs. Iris never saw the cost, but I did, and I was done paying it. The request came just after dessert. The plates were still warm, and the others were drifting toward the patio with glasses in hand when Iris lingered behind, motioning me toward the kitchen. I knew the look. She was always most polite just before asking for something. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, the light catching her polished ring. "I wanted to talk to you about something exciting," she said, voice airy. "The boutique's doing really well. I've got an opportunity to lease the space next door. It would double our square footage, maybe even a second-line homewares, or skincare. It's the next step." I nodded slowly, waiting. "But the bank wants someone to co-sign." She added, "It's just a formality. 70,000. You know how this works better than anyone." She smiled, as if that were a compliment. "It would mean a lot." I looked at her. The layers of her request were as familiar as wallpaper. I could already hear the silence that would follow if I said yes, the absence of thanks. The forgetting. "I can't do that." "Iris," I said evenly. She blinked, then laughed. "Why not? You're not exactly stretched thin. What do you even do all day?" Caden walked in just in time to hear it and froze near the sink. He didn't say a word. I turned to face her fully. "I spend my days exactly the way I want to, and I'm not co-signing." Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. She looked at Caden, but he was busy drying a glass that didn't need drying. The silence between us stretched too long. I smiled faintly and stepped past them both. No raised voices, no drama, just an answer that didn't require repetition. Outside, the sun was low, warm against my back. I walked through the gate without saying goodbye and went home to unlock the drawer. The key was still where I always kept it, tucked inside an old sewing tin behind the ledger books. My hands didn't shake, though I half expected them to. I slid the bottom drawer open, the metal rails groaning, as if the weight of what was inside had become too much even for them. The folder was thick now, over a decade of receipts, transfers, notarized statements, silent contributions. Each page had a name on it, sometimes mine, sometimes theirs, but every number belonged to me. Near the back was the contract from 2017. Iris had been frantic then. The boutique had barely survived its first 2 years. Rent was overdue. Her inventory supplier was threatening legal action. I remember the phone call clearly. She didn't cry, but her voice had that ragged edge just before panic breaks. Caden had already drained what little savings they had. The bank had declined them. She had nowhere else to go. I met her at a diner near the highway. I had the contract ready, printed, reviewed, and witnessed. I didn't want to be reckless. If I was going to risk $60,000 of my retirement, I needed some assurance. She didn't read it carefully. She signed where I told her to. Twice, then slid the papers back across the table and exhaled like someone had been resuscitated. I filed it away the next morning. Never brought it up again. Until now. The line was clear. In exchange for financial bailout totaling $60,000, Lenore Halstead assumes 52% ownership of the Gilded Fern, effective immediately. It was legal, notarized, quietly binding. She must have thought I'd forgotten, or that I'd never use it. And for a while, she was right. I had convinced myself that silence meant peace, that letting her pretend meant keeping the family intact. But peace isn't built on denial. I slipped the contract into a new envelope. Tomorrow, it would no longer live in a drawer. Tomorrow, it would be handed back to the one who forgot what she signed. The moment I stepped through the gate that afternoon, I knew it had shifted something. Not in them, at least not yet, but in me. There was no drama, no slammed doors or shouting matches, just a sentence, quiet and deliberate. That landed like a crack through glass. I left before it could shatter. 3 days passed. Then the knock came. Iris stood rigid, her arms folded tight, jaw clenched. Caden looked tired, older somehow, eyes already asking for the conversation to end before it began. I opened the door wide and stepped aside. "Would you like tea?" I asked. I wasn't trying to be gracious. I just wanted to be steady. "We're not here for tea," Iris snapped, stepping into my living room without waiting for an invitation. Caden followed slowly. I walked to the sideboard and picked up the envelope. The folder inside wasn't thick, just precise, years distilled into pages. I handed it to Caden. He looked at me, confused, then opened it and began to read. His eyes moved slowly, then faster. The color drained from his face as he flipped through the wire transfers, the tuition receipts, the notarized contract. "Iris," he said, voice tight. "Did you sign this?" She barely glanced at the paper. "It's exaggerated. She's twisting things. That was years ago." "It's your signature," he said. "And the numbers, these are real." Iris crossed her arms again, her tone icy. "She's using this to control us. That's what this is." I sat in the armchair across from them. "No, I'm using it to stop being erased." Caden looked at me then. Really looked. I saw the recognition come slowly, like someone realizing they'd been speaking over silence for too long. Iris refused to meet my eyes. I didn't ask for an apology. I knew it wouldn't come, but I had given them the folder. I had brought everything into daylight. What they did with it next wasn't mine to carry. The next morning, the silence between us cracked into something sharper. They came again 2 days later. No knock this time, just the sound of the doorbell held down too long. I opened it to find Iris already mid-sentence. "This is ridiculous," she hissed. "You're a parasite, clinging to something you never built." I didn't flinch. Caden stood behind her, eyes weary. He looked like he hadn't slept. "Mom," he said quietly, "can we please just talk? This isn't worth destroying the family." I waited. He rubbed his hands together. "Just sell your shares. We'll buy them outright. You can walk away from this with no more tension, no more conflict." I looked between them and spoke calmly. I didn't ask for ownership. Caden. I didn't seek control. I stepped in when no one else would. I co-signed, funded, rescued, and then I stepped back and let you both take the credit. Iris opened her mouth, but I raised my hand. I wasn't clinging. I was holding things together because I thought it mattered, now that it doesn't seem to. I'm simply refusing to disappear. Caden shifted uncomfortably. Iris stared hard, like she could will me into guilt. "I'm not relinquishing my stake," I said. "I'm not erasing my part to make you more comfortable." Neither of them answered. The silence stretched. Not awkward, but final. A kind of closing. Then, without another word, they turned and walked back down the porch steps. I closed the door gently behind them and let the stillness return. I had told them I wouldn't sell. Now I had to show them what that meant. I went to their house the next afternoon. Not to plead, not to argue, just to be clear. I brought the folder again, tucked under my arm like a ledger I couldn't leave unfinished. Iris answered the door with a stiff smile that didn't reach her eyes. Caden sat in the living room, his hands clasped between his knees. No one offered me coffee this time. I placed the documents on the coffee table without ceremony. "These aren't threats," I said. "They're records. I'm not asking for anything, just making sure you understand what's already been signed." Caden flipped through the pages like he had before. Slower this time. Iris leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. "You want to be the hero now?" she asked. "Is that what this is? You want us to bow and say thank you?" "No," I said. "I want to close the account." She let out a sharp laugh. "You're not a hero. You're just bitter. You've always needed to feel important." I kept my voice steady. "I'm not here to be the hero. I was the accountant. And now the account is closed." Caden looked up. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, "that whatever you build from here, however you keep the boutique open, or don't, is yours to carry. I won't fund it, fix it, or answer for it anymore." No one stopped me as I stood. I picked up the folder, left the copies on the table, and walked out, behind me. The silence felt heavier than it had before. 2 mornings later, a thick envelope slid through my mail slot. The envelope was thick and official. I already knew what it was before I opened it. Coercion. Undue influence. A claim that I had manipulated Iris into signing the ownership contract while she was under financial and emotional duress. They wanted the shares returned, control restored, my name removed from everything. I called Blythe that night. She didn't ask questions, just gave me a name. Margot Delaney, retired litigator, still sharp as glass. She read the contract, the bank statements, the email threads with the landlord and suppliers. She nodded once, the kind of nod that meant she wasn't concerned. "This is a bluff," she said. "We'll end it cleanly." And we did. The hearing lasted under 20 minutes. Their lawyer argued a motion. Margot presented facts, dates, figures, signed forms, timestamps, my transfer of funds, my ownership agreement, my role in saving the business from collapse. The judge, a woman with silver hair and tired eyes, looked over the papers, then directly at Iris. "The evidence is unshakable," she said. "Motion to dismiss is granted." Iris flinched at the sound of the gavel. She left the courtroom with Caden, her face pale, her steps uneven. Neither of them looked at me. Outside, Margot turned to me with a nod. "It's over," she said. "They can't touch your shares again." I nodded back, but I didn't feel triumphant, just tired. The kind of tired that comes after years of silence finally break into truth. The quiet wasn't immediate. It crept in over weeks, like ivy over a fence, persistent, deliberate. First, the texts thinned out, then the phone calls disappeared altogether. The silence should have stung, but instead, it felt like space had been cleared inside me. Without the monthly transfers, the boutique's polish began to fade. I heard from Blythe, through a friend of a friend, that Iris had downsized inventory and let go of 2 staff members. There was talk of late rent, rumors that suppliers were beginning to demand prepayment. I didn't gloat. I didn't hope for collapse. But I also didn't rescue. I had spent so long being useful that I'd forgotten what stillness looked like. Now, my mornings began with dirt under my nails and the soft rustle of leaves in early sun. I learned to divide dahlias. I harvested rosemary and gave it to Pauline, who pressed it into bread for the cafe next door. I painted badly at first, then not quite as badly. I began losing time in it, which was a kind of freedom I hadn't felt in decades. Volunteering at the financial clinic gave my mind structure. I met people who'd never owned a checking account, widows trying to figure out online billing systems, college students trying to build credit the right way. No one sneered at what I did. No one asked if it was enough. It was strange, how deeply seen I felt simply by being useful to those who never asked more than I offered. Then came the message. Caden's name lit up my screen. "Mom, we miss you." No punctuation, no details. I read it once. Then again. It didn't say I'm sorry. It didn't say I understand. It said we miss you. As if absence was the only crime that had ever occurred. As if distance, not dismissal, had cracked us open. I didn't reply. I didn't draft a response and delete it. I didn't sit with the ache or hope it would pass. I just deleted the message and turned my phone face down on the table. There was water boiling for tea, a half-finished canvas in the sunroom. The hose was still coiled near the peonies, which had begun to curl slightly at the edges, so I filled the watering can and stepped back into the garden. The life they tried to make me feel small in was never really mine. This one was, and it bloomed without permission.